Imagine you're walking through the London fog in the mid-19th century. You're Walter Hartright, a young man working as a drawing master, trying to make a decent living, when a sudden, unexpected opportunity arises. You're offered a lucrative position at Limmeridge House, a grand estate in Cumberland. It sounds like a dream, but as you prepare to leave the city, you can't shake a strange, intuitive sense of dread. This is where Wilkie Collins begins his masterpiece, The Woman in White. It's a story that feels less like a traditional Victorian novel and more like a modern thriller. It's driven by secrets, mistaken identities, and a sense of impending doom that follows the characters through every chapter. Before Walter even arrives at Limmeridge, he has a chance encounter that sets the entire mystery in motion. On a dark, moonlit heath, he sees a woman dressed entirely in white. She looks distressed, almost ghostly, and she vanishes into the night. This is Anne Catherick, a woman who has lived her life under a strange, lifelong vow to always wear white. She is a woman haunted by a secret from her past, and her appearance is the first thread in a web that will eventually pull everyone into a conspiracy. When Walter finally arrives at Limmeridge House, he enters a world of quiet, wealthy eccentricity. The master of the house is Walter Fairlie, a man who is both incredibly wealthy and incredibly unpleasant. He's a self-indulgent invalid who spends his days in a state of constant complaining lethargy. He has 2 women in his household who are central to the story. First, there's Laura Fairlie, his niece. She is beautiful, gentle, and possesses a quiet grace that immediately captures Walter's heart. Then there's Marian Halcombe, Laura's half-sister. Marian is perhaps one of the most fascinating characters in Victorian literature. She isn't the typical fragile lady of the era. She is sharp-witted, observant, and possesses a strength of character that makes her the intellectual engine of the story. As Walter begins his work, a chilling realization begins to dawn on him. He looks at Laura Fairlie, and then he thinks of the woman in white he saw on the heath. They are identical. They are doppelgangers. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a signal that the fate of the gentle Laura is inextricably linked to the tragic, wandering Anne Catherick. The romantic tension between Walter and Laura begins to grow, but it is quickly threatened by the arrival of Sir Percival Glyde. Percival is a man of high social standing, but he is also a man of dark, desperate character. He is set to marry Laura, not out of love, but because he is facing financial ruin and needs her massive inheritance to maintain his lifestyle. He is the kind of villain who hides behind a mask of gentlemanly propriety, but beneath that mask lies a predatory intent. To make his plan work, Percival needs a partner who understands the mechanics of manipulation. Enter Count Fosco. Fosco is perhaps one of the most complex antagonists ever written. He is charming, incredibly polite, and possesses a certain sophisticated grace that makes people trust him instantly. But he is also a master manipulator, a man who views people like pieces on a chessboard. Together, Percival and Fosco hatch a terrifying scheme. They don't just want Laura's money. They want to erase her very existence so they can access her fortune without interference. The conspiracy takes a dark, surreal turn. Through a series of calculated deceptions, the real Laura Fairlie is kidnapped. In her place, the dying Anne Catherick is brought in. Because they look so much alike, the deception is seamless. The world is told that Lady Glyde has died, but in reality, it is the fragile Anne Catherick who is committed to an asylum under Laura's name. The real Laura is left in a state of social and legal non-existence. She is alive, but to the law and to society, she is a ghost, held in secret while an imposter takes her place in the institution. While Laura is trapped in this nightmare, Walter Hartright is forced into exile. He is a man without a country, searching for the truth while the villains believe they have won. But he isn't alone. Marian Halcombe has been working in the shadows, using her intellect and her refusal to be intimidated by men like Percival and Fosco to piece together the fragments of the truth. When Walter finally returns, he realizes that the only way to fight a conspiracy built on lies is to use deception of his own. He and Marian engage in a high-stakes game of shadows. They realize that to reclaim Laura, they must perform a second identity swap. They manage to expose the fraud, ensuring that the woman in the asylum is revealed as the imposter, while the real Laura is brought back into the light of her rightful life. The resolution is swift and somewhat violent. The web of lies unravels as the evidence of Sir Percival's crimes comes to light. Percival dies in a desperate, accidental attempt to destroy the evidence against him. Count Fosco, The man who thought he could outrun his own shadow meets a far more calculated end. He is assassinated in Paris by a secret political brotherhood, a victim of the very international networks of influence he used to facilitate his crimes. In the end, the chaos settles. Walter and Laura, having survived the erasure of their identities, are married and living a peaceful life as the rightful heirs to the Limmeridge estate. The ghosts of the past are finally laid to rest. When we look back at The Woman in White, it's easy to see why it was such a sensation when it was first published in 1859. Wilkie Collins wasn't just writing a mystery, he was writing a critique of the world he lived in. He used the structure of the sensation novel, with its multiple perspectives, its rapid pacing, and its obsession with hidden secrets, to explore some very uncomfortable truths about Victorian society. One of the most striking themes is the idea of identity and erasure. In the Victorian era, a person's identity was tied almost entirely to their legal status and their social standing. If you lost your name, if you were declared dead or committed to an asylum under someone else's name, you effectively ceased to exist in the eyes of the law. Collins shows us how terrifyingly easy it was for powerful men to use the legal and social frameworks of the time to kill a woman without ever touching her. It's a commentary on the vulnerability of women, whose bodies and properties were often treated as assets to be managed by their husbands or male relatives. This leads us to the concept of agency. Throughout the novel, we see a struggle between those who have power and those who are subject to it. Laura is a victim of this power, but Marion Halcombe represents a different kind of agency. She doesn't have the social standing or the legal rights that the men in the novel wield, but she has the intelligence and the courage to fight back. She is the character who proves that even within a rigid system, there is room for resistance. We should also consider the motif of the doppelganger. The physical resemblance between Laura and Anne Catherick is more than just a plot device to facilitate the identity swap. It's a literary tool used to create a sense of fate and impending doom. The idea that one person's life can be mirrored or even stolen by another is a deeply unsettling concept, and Collins uses it to heighten the psychological tension of the story. It suggests that our identities are fragile things, easily swapped or obscured by the shadows of others. Then there is the mask of propriety. This is perhaps best embodied in Count Fosco. In many Victorian novels, the villain is a brute, a dark, brooding figure who is clearly evil. But Fosco is different. He is charming, he is well-mannered, and he is highly respected. He uses the rules of social etiquette as a shield for his criminality. This was a sharp observation by Collins, that the most dangerous people are often those who appear to be the most civilized. The mask of being a gentleman allows characters like Percival and Fosco to commit atrocities while remaining above suspicion in the eyes of polite society. Finally, there's the structure itself. Collins's use of multiple narrators, Walter, Marion, and others, gives the reader a sense of being a detective. We aren't just being told a story, we are piecing it together alongside the characters. This technique creates a sense of subjectivity. We only know what the narrator knows, which allows for the suspense and the sudden, shocking revelations that make the sensation novel so addictive. The Woman in White is a book that manages to be both a thrilling piece of entertainment and a profound social critique. It takes the elements of a Gothic ghost story, the mysterious woman in white, the moonlit heaths, the crumbling estates, and grounds them in the very real, very legalistic anxieties of the 19th century. It asks us what makes a person who they are. Is it their soul, or is it their name, their property, and the way the world perceives them? By the time the final pages are turned, we realize that while names can be stolen and identities can be erased, the truth has a way of resurfacing, even if it has to travel through the darkest of shadows to find the light.